changes, additions, or removals to the agenda?
No, sir.
Okay, discussion for appropriation for the ARPA funds.
Sure. Well, thank you all for coming. This is our second. We set out to have at least 2 public meetings regarding the appropriation of the ARPA funds that were distributed to the town. This is the second of those meetings. Our last meeting on April 17th was, I felt, a very productive meeting. A lot of solid public input. Some ideas on what we can do. Just as a quick overview, the town has $331,926 that needs to be allocated by the end of the calendar year this year. Those funds need to be spent by the end of the calendar year 2026. So just as kind of an overview, I sent a little overshot to the boards as well. The way I see some of this playing out is we've had our 2 meetings of public input, gathered some great information. I've continued outside of this. I've taken some or all the projects that were brought up, looked at them closer with our department heads, committees, et cetera, those that will be necessarily the more hands-on if these projects were to be shovel ready and kind of get moving forward. So we kind of started to develop that a little bit. I've worked with some community members to have conversations about projects that they are helping us develop that can be presented. So really my goal is, we'll have our discussion tonight, and then we'll continue, and I will then take the ball and continue to work with those people that I just mentioned. And by end of May, select board meeting in June, I will have a formal presentation for the board and for the community that will get out before that, that the board will be able to then determine what projects they want to allocate these funds for. Again, $331,000, having that is not a bad thing. So we can kind of take it for what it is. I had some projects that I mentioned at our last meeting that I think are very important, that money should be allocated for immediately. The big one for us in the town is the transfer station bathroom. $50,000. Still, that gives you just shy of $200,000, which we can begin to spread out, and I'll have closer numbers. And some projects that we've looked at are not necessarily a one and done project. It's not something that we want to invest money in. I think it's been brought up a few times. One of the key things with the ARPA funds, and that one that I agree with, is that we don't want to invest in something that's going to continuously cost us money. That down the road, we're looking at spending more and more and more. But we may have some projects that we allocate money for, that we have a 1 to 3 year plan, that by the 3rd year, we're back and developed a project that we might have to add some of our budget funds for. So we need to look at those. So that being said, I guess Mr. Chair, I'd say public discussion, and that's kind of an overview of where we are. I think we've come a long way in the last 20 days of doing this. So I feel like we're in a pretty good spot.
Okay, any comments from any of the citizens? John?
I just have, this is John Denner. I just have a question about the list. I gather you've put together a list of where the funds, you see them going. And what would that list be? And if you've prioritized them yet?
So I personally, as I mentioned, there are things that I do see as a priority for the town. I mean, I'll use the village. The village, we said priority is sidewalks. Pretty cut and dry. We're going to allocate a majority of the monies for their portion for the sidewalks. That seemed to be, not only from the board's vision, but community input really pushed us that way. The town, again, the transfer station bathroom, I think is one of the utmost things that we allocate that for. That's a key. But I'll just give you an idea of some of the things that have been brought up here. Is the dog park, Jewel Brook Dam alert system, which is the notification system of where the spillways, how close they are to being activated. There was a request for the mountain bike trail system. the tennis courts in Dorsey Park project, Heald Auditorium, let's see here, West Hill, development of the West Hill rec area. So those are some of these. We've had a few, just today I had a request from the museum for an allocation to them to continue their museum, the development at the Historical Society. I think that we need to look, if we can allocate even a small appropriation to any of our, local committees, associations, that's something we should strongly look at because there's, strong pieces of this community. So in terms of prioritizing, I kind of put them, with the exception of that one that I've mentioned thus far, I'm going to put them all together in a list and bring them to the board. I think, even just looking at it now, the projects that I've mentioned and the projects that the community has brought forward, I think we can come close to hitting them all in one way, shape, or form. Because I haven't seen anything where I've gone, wow, we should just take $300,000 and put it to that. If there was, and I'd be the first one staying here, yeah, we should put it to that. But unfortunately, the projects, we have many big projects here in town that we're going to have to face. And unfortunately, $300,000 or $100,000 isn't going to really do much for them. So we're going to have to deal with those by themselves. I'd rather take care of, spread as much wealth around as we can. And I think we've said in the past, even at our last meeting, this should be with the bathroom. I'm going to say that needs to be done. But these things we're looking at here, this money should be used for something that makes us kind of happy, rather than, I think it's been brought up that, ideally we don't want to take it and bury it in the ground. It should be something like, wow, that's what we used that COVID money for. That's what we did here. Whether that's a sidewalk or a tennis court or a piece of playground equipment or a new sign, all of those are on the table. I think ideally it'd be something I'd like to drive by and see every day. So in terms of priorities, I think that will be left to the board and myself, come end of May, and we'll be able to say, all right, I will have a breakdown of, to the penny of, hey, this is where we can go with these funds. And if they like it, great. If not, they'll tell me to do it again.
Anybody else? Gail?
Gail Beardmore. I own England Volkers right down the street, and I'm just here to support the dog park. We raised ourselves about $4,000 for it, and we understand there's a roughly $7,500 that was designated from the flood. From all the fundraising from the flood, and I just want to say that everybody we talk to is passionate about it. We go to all the festivals around. We bring a dog kissing booth with us, and we raise tons of money for that. And people have told me they have moved here because we have a dog park. And they keep saying, what can you tell us what's happening with that money? And we can't tell them anything yet. And it sounds like we might be able to soon.
Yeah,
Trying to find the magical place to put it.
Yeah.
I know.
Not lose it again.
I know. I understand that. I do understand that. But if we could get a berm around it,
Yeah.
But you don't need to hear all that.
I think, Brett's right. The key piece is finding a place to put it that suits everybody. But in terms of putting it back and making that happen financially, I think is very important. I've been in conversations with the Vermont Community Foundation, which is talking about, they're looking for projects that they can to help. And the two they've looked at in Ludlow is Dorsey and the tennis courts and the dog park. And really what it comes down to is that they want to back a project that isn't funded, that they're funding solely and FEMA's not involved. So one thing we're going to have to look at, and we might have to make this decision on the dog park sooner than later to get it back. But if FEMA is not going to give, say if FEMA gives us and this could be the same for the tennis courts. Say if FEMA's going to say, guess what, we're going to give you $5,000 for the tennis. Is it worth us to just say, thank you, but we're going to forget the 5,000, and knowing that we're going to get 5 times that from Vermont Community Foundation? So that's something we have to look at. So, because if they're, and I'm just throwing, if Vermont Community Foundation comes out and says, hey, for the dog park and the tennis courts, we're going to give you $70,000. Great. I'm making that number up. I know that I believe they got a fair amount of money from Fish in their concerts that they did in Saratoga Springs, that there was a large sum of money that was donated to the Vermont Community Foundation. So those are the things but Gail, you're right. That's a priority is one of those. It's getting that back one way or the other, even if it's outside of the ARPA stuff.
Good. So it sounds like you might have answers in some manner.
30 days. Yeah. I would, things have changed, FEMA's involved with this a little bit, but FEMA, the landscape with their, unfortunately, their leadership has been scrubbed again. So we're now on our 6th project manager. We meet with them tomorrow. We'll have a better idea of where that plays out. So maybe 30 days. Again, we haven't seen a dime from the town or village, which is crazy, but.
Anybody else?
Evening, everybody. Michael Normile, and at the risk of sounding somewhat redundant, I'd like to throw again my support and thank you to the town manager and everything you guys do, and Nick. But following up on some comments and support for the rec area, as much as I'm passionate about tennis, I think we need to think outside of the box, and it's a multi-sport, multi-recreation facility down there. And I have a little pamphlet here I'll give you. I'm sure you're well aware of a lot of this information, but I don't want you to think that when people come up here, they're just going to give you a couple ideas and walk away. So I'm still working, but I spent a fair amount of time again with Brennan's help and ideas. Talked to Ula today. She gave me a summary of how much funds we've spent since 2005 on the tennis court. It's about $30,000, but 2005 was 19 years ago. And it just goes to show you, and based on a comment Alan made a couple of weeks ago, I understand clearly you want to have a project that doesn't have significant operational costs, but as we all know from our own house, you got to keep investing. Couple other things I looked at today. Talked to someone at Springfield Fencing. I talked to a gentleman up at Vermont Tennis, Advantage Tennis, and the owner of Wilson and Lawrence tennis courts. You've heard of these names before. All these people are vendors the town has used in the past at different stages, but I want to again throw my volunteer support to help town manager in any way possible. Had a long chat with 2 of the 3 guys. I sent him a bunch of pictures. Hopefully we're going to get them down here so they can see the courts and so we can help develop a scope of work. At the risk of sounding, our recreation manager doesn't play tennis, and we need other people to help him develop a scope of work. And I'm glad to do it. And John can help us, or other people. We need people who are passionate about activity. I don't know the first thing about a dog park. I think it's a great idea. I'll echo Gail's comments. I've sold a couple condominiums, and people specifically ranted and raved about that dog park. I'll throw my 2 cents on why can't that be up at West Hill? West Hill is a totally underused area. Some of you guys weren't even born, but we used to ice skate there. And there's we could put courts up there. Following up on possible grants so that Brennan and I don't cross paths and duplicate efforts. He had already approached Vermont Foundation, Community Foundation. I found out about the Vermont Building and Ground Services Department. I didn't even ever knew there was that department. They have recreation grants. I took a look at that information, had some contacts down there. There's a whole bunch of pictures here for this multi-purpose court. And if you haven't seen it yourself, I'd really ask you guys to go down there and take a look. I know you have a lot of grounds to look at. Someone mentioned the idea of a good, better, best type of program when you put together a scope of work. And what we don't want to do is put paint on a pig, so to speak. And I'll just leave this with you. I know a lot of this information is redundant, but I just want you to know there's volunteers out there who are willing, ready, willing, and able, and passionate, about helping you guys out. I think that's it, and thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And just to add to that, the Westfield Dam, just so you know, Gail, is something that we did talk about and may have, because we would never use it as a swimming rec field like we did back in 30 years ago.
Yeah, we used to swim there. And we had skating rink there.
It's property that we own, so we're not on something, it's not in the flood zone, even though the dam floods, where we're looking at, or possibly looking at, is the basketball court, if not a little bit more. It's been brought up.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Alice?
Alice Nitka. I think it's certainly time to have a bathroom for the people at the transfer station. That's really very long overdue, and it's hard to believe that we still don't have it, so I think that's really very badly needed. In the dog park, of course, I've heard people also talk about wanting to use the dog park, but also what I've seen around the state is there was a fellow here who spoke about mountain biking trails and maybe that group. And I have to admit, the success in the Northeast Kingdom of those trails is unbelievable. And also at Killington, the number of people using them. And it would attract some younger people to this area, which I think we always have been wanting and need badly. So I think, if Brennan and the money can work it out, I think giving something to many of those organizations would be great.
Yeah. Thanks. Anybody else? Oh, Alan?
Good afternoon, Alan Couch, 21 Meadow Street, Village and Town person. Thank you, Alice, for pointing out the need for sanitary facilities at the town transfer station. I am sure that if a spouse or a significant other of anyone here came home and said, I have no hot and cold running water to wash my hands, the facility would have been built there years ago. And using ARPA funds to do that is a gross waste of money, in my opinion. That should have been done long ago with funds from whatever budgetary item in the town budget. That being said, I have harped on in the past 3 meetings about the ARPA allocation to the village and the town. And yes, I should not look a gift horse in the mouth. I'm wondering, as a friend pointed out, I sort of had blinders on about the amount of money and how much money we didn't get. My question is, based on the money that was allocated to the Town and Village of Ludlow, is that commensurate with allocations to other municipalities in the state? And if so, where did the rest of the money go? My plan this evening, in the next, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, is to write to Governor Scott and Treasurer Pichek. I believe Mike Pichek is the treasurer these days, to ask them for a rundown of the allocation of these funds. There needs to be transparency. We need to know, as nobody's in Ludlow where all that money went. That being said, on a positive note, I agree with what our town manager said about using these funds to spruce up the town. I don't necessarily agree with the sidewalks, because that should be a highway budget, and that's in the village. Sorry to digress, but in the town, yeah, the mountain bike trails, the dog park, if we probably shouldn't rebuild where it was, just as I shouldn't rebuild where I am, I think. Once bitten, shame on me, that kind of thing. So yeah, let's use these funds for something that doesn't break the budget down the road, but I don't know, if it buys a piece of equipment for the highway department that they can use, and if they maintain it for many years, we can work it into the budget to buy a new one in 15 years. The snow blower on the side of the street, the whatever, just something that works for us, something, that we're not spending money on that we should be spending money on anyway. So, again, appreciate the efforts you guys put in showing up every month, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alan.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Anything else for you?
No, I will continue to push forward, and we'll, whether we just plan to meet in June, which this can probably be a discussion on the June select board agenda item. That seems reasonable to me.
So one thing that I had was just in chatting with people in different groups, one other thing, recreation was a huge thing that was talked about, but also some sort of an art project or something along those lines, kind of along with beautifying the town. And I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I don't know if Brendan, you've heard of anything along those lines. Just kind of on that, in that vein of the bonus stuff that we don't normally get to invest in.
Yeah, it has been, just kind of thrown out when people were chatting and talking about, an art installation, a mural, or something like that. I think it's, it sounds like a wonderful idea. I am the farthest thing from an artist, so I'm not really allowed near colored pencils in my house. So I would entertain any and all ideas. I just I'm not, the murals on Brewfest, I think everybody agrees are fantastic. Is there a place or a design where something like that may work? I don't know, but I would definitely entertain something like that. That would be something that strikes me as very enjoyable and probably relatively cheap in comparison to talking about some of the projects we are. So something we could definitely, if anybody has any input, please reach out.
Okay, anything under other business?
I do not, sir.
So I guess we have a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
We have a second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Guys have it.